Sounds good. Good afternoon, everyone. It is getting close to our Hill visits, our Diversity and Fair Housing Summit. So it's time to prepare for our activities in DC. So thank you for joining the call. It's being recorded so that we can share to others who might have missed this meeting. We are very fortunate this afternoon to have Irene Bueno, our policy consultant in DC. Irene, we have been working with Irene for, Irene, since 2016, right? Or 2015, I want to say. Yeah, before we embarked on the No Other campaign. That was the whole reason for why we brought Irene on board. Was we knew in 2015 that we would be engaging in this pretty ambitious campaign to change the way the U.S. Census Bureau would be reporting home ownership. And so it was largely in part because of Irene's help and collectively with Jim and John and Vicki at that time, who was chairwoman of ARIA, that we were able to make that change. So pretty significant change. If you take a look at the U.S. Census Bureau, the quarterly housing report only began in 2016, in July 2016, and that is because of the great work that we have done as an organization. So with that, Irene has so many great experience, and again, we are very, very fortunate to have her represent us in DC and do a lot of the work for ARIA when it comes to federal advocacy and policy work. So she's going to give us an overview of kind of like, setting appointments with our congressional and Senate representatives and all of that stuff. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Irene.
Okay, thank you so much, Hope. And it's really been a pleasure to work with ARIA, with you and the entire ARIA membership and all the different presidents and boards over the years. I think we've accomplished a lot. Obviously, I've been working with you since before the pandemic, and we have been involved in your policy summits every year and to provide guidance on scheduling Hill visits. Obviously, in the last 2 years, we've gone virtual, but we are hoping this year we can do some meetings in person. Before I go any further, I want to introduce Jennifer Jackson, who works on the NBG team at my firm, who is helping with the visits. And so she is also a great resource for all of you. I know maybe probably some of you were involved in past Hill visits, but again, since it's post-pandemic, it's a little bit different. And I have to say, every day it's still evolving, but we're going to try our best to give you some guidance on the best way to schedule meetings in this kind of hybrid atmosphere in DC right now. Just an overview, the Capitol has basically kind of been closed for most of the pandemic, but also because of the January 6th and security issues related to that. They have been allowing visitors to go to the Hill, but again, if you were here in the past, you could just walk in it's like a airport and just walk through security and go to your meetings. They are requiring now that if you have a meeting on Capitol Hill, someone has to come get you and escort you. You just can't walk around freely. They're expanding the number of people who can do that, but it's still pretty strict in terms of you're not just wandering on the Hill by yourself. So I just wanted to give you that kind of background that security is still an issue here. So it's not clear whether your meetings will be in person or virtual, but we're going to kind of walk through how you request a meeting, and then we can go into sort of the in-person versus virtual. So thank you, Jennifer. So I think most of you have received an email from Jennifer. If you have registered for the summit, I assume that most of you have, and that's why you're here on this call. In that email, she has laid out who your members of Congress are and your senators. and has provided information to you for the scheduler for the member of Congress and for the housing staff. The request is obviously that you want to request a meeting with the member of Congress if possible. That's why the email goes to the scheduler. But we understand that members of Congress are very busy, so we also want the housing staff to be on the email in case the member cannot meet. You can correspond with the housing staff to schedule a meeting. And as we mentioned already, some meetings are still meeting virtually. We can talk a little bit about that later. And we can go into what the email will say when you reach out to these offices, but the important thing is after you schedule a meeting that you fill out the Google form so that we can track when all the meetings are taking place. So we know when they're happening. Also, you may have some people who live in your district or your state who will be attending the same meeting. So we want to make sure that everybody has that information. What we've learned in the past is sometimes people will say, well, this isn't my member of Congress, but I'm really good friends with them, so I'm going to reach out to them. And what will happen is that you'll have two people from ARIA requesting meetings at the same time for the same issues. And while members of Congress love us, they find that a little bit annoying because they don't know, they don't want to schedule two meetings. They want to just schedule one meeting. So we are trying to be very clear about who your member of Congress is and who you will be reaching out to so they're not getting those duplicates. In states that have many ARIA members and chapters, we laid out some examples there for California, Georgia, Massachusetts, et cetera. We will obviously have many ARIA members from those states. So we will schedule those meetings for you, or Jennifer will do that, and then let you know when those meetings are scheduled. Again, to avoid that multiple requests for a meeting. Right. And then the last thing is that we have links here where the details of all those meetings will be posted. So again, if you are in that district, you will know when your meeting is. But let me pause there for a second and just see if there are any questions. Maybe we go to the next, well, let me just pause there and see if there's any questions, and probably the next slide might answer some of them. But, oh, wait, Jordan, do you have a question? Or I see a hand. Maybe not. Okay, well, let's just go on to the next slide. So this is a template. We will send this to you as well. So this would be an email, which we will be sending to you their email addresses. The important thing is in this first line, as a constituent, members of Congress like to meet with their constituents when they are in Washington, D.C. So that will catch their attention immediately. Then you are just requesting a meeting with the representative or senator and just insert their names there to discuss API issues. And the issues that we laid out are some of the things that are in the 3-point plan. And then just giving them a little bit of background that you're part of ARIA and that you're going to be in DC. And then we listed the availability. Your availability is based on what is scheduled for the summit, which the mornings are taken up with sessions for everyone. And then in the afternoon we put down those times when you're available for meeting. You personally might have different times when you're available. So you could adjust that accordingly. And just simply just thank you. And we look forward to hearing from you. So for example, if you, this week actually is a good week to reach out to offices because Congress is not in session. So they have a little bit more time to process some of these requests. So if you send this email out, for example, tomorrow, I would wait a week. If you don't hear back, I would follow up to make sure that they receive the email and to check on the status of the meeting. And then as we get closer, if you don't hear back, then I would check like almost every couple of days. Okay, next slide. This is a Google form that I referenced earlier. Once you get your meeting scheduled, to fill that out so that we can populate the chart that has all the meetings that are scheduled. I think that's probably pretty self-explanatory. And then the next slide is just, I think, questions, right? Yeah, so I know that this question has come up and maybe Jordan can jump in here, but some of you have asked, what you will be discussing in the meeting and what materials you have. There is a 3-point plan, and I believe a draft will come out soon, as well as a leave behind or a document that you can share after your meeting. The next question that we get is, can I attend a meeting with members of Congress that don't represent my home district or state? As I kind of referenced earlier, the preference is for you to meet with your member of Congress and senator, so that, again, they appreciate and like to hear from their own constituents. Obviously, if you have a personal relationship, you can do what you want, but at the same time, we would like to coordinate. So again, we're not having to request go into those offices. And I think, is there anything else after that, Jennifer? I think that's the last slide, right?
Yeah, that's the last slide.
Okay. So, it's an overview. I said I would talk about whether if it's a Zoom call. So I have to say, I'm going to be very general here, but what I have found is that Republican offices have been meeting in person and don't seem troubled by getting you and escorting you. So I get that sun coming in here. Democratic offices tend to be still doing Zoom calls. So, you might find that happening as you make your request. So with Zoom calls, obviously, having it during that time period, that 12 to 5 kind of Wednesday and Thursday afternoon is preferable, but there's also, of course, flexibility. If they are not available during those timeframes, you can find another time. And I think all of us have set up Zoom calls. Probably most of us have our own Zoom number. You can just send a calendar request to that office with your Zoom and do your call at whatever is scheduled. But again, we want to note that for the chart that a meeting has been scheduled, but it is on Zoom. So I think that's all I have. Jennifer, did I miss anything? Or Hope, Jordan, anyone?
No, I think that's pretty comprehensive as far as the logistics for meetings and all of that stuff. Jennifer or Jordan?
Yeah, so for the materials that are going to be included, so we're going to have a flyer that has a shorter version of the 3-point plan, talks about the background and talks about kind of our proposed solutions. So that'll be something that you'll leave behind at your meetings. And then we're also going to be coming out with a digital, more long form version of the 3-point plan that we're going to be posting pretty soon. So that's also something that you could review to kind of have in your memory as you're going through the flyer when you have these meetings.
I think, yeah, there are a few questions. So I think Joyce and Cleo.
Hi, thank you, Irene. Just wondering, is there a preference about us providing the summary sheet 3-point plan ahead of time, or do you prefer that we not show them what we are going to be discussing with them so that they will listen to us? Is there a preference?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to not provide the material until after we talk, because they end up like looking at the piece of paper, right? You can, like, in the email, that's why, we drafted it with a little bit of a preview of what you're going to discuss, but you don't have to give that all, right? So that's generally when just have so few in-person meetings these days. But yeah, I usually try to talk to them first, and then at the end, hand them the leave behind so that they can focus on it when you go and not during while you're trying to speak to them.
Right, great. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that's how, you also, because that's what I'm used to doing myself when we meet. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Now, if you meet with a member of Congress, the staffer who's preparing the briefing materials for that member of Congress may ask for that for the briefing material. So, to be nice to them, you can, provide them a little bit, but again, you don't want them looking at the memo. So, okay, thanks, Joyce. Clea?
Hi, everyone. I have a quick question. After the meeting that we have with our representative and so on, are there any follow-ups that we go back to you or somebody from National about the experiences that we've had after we've talked with our own team?
Yeah, I think last time we did this, and maybe we'll try again and maybe have more success, to send out another Google form, with asking you to provide input from your meeting. How did they go? Is there follow-up required? Are there questions that they had? Because, they could ask questions that you don't know the answer to, and you don't want to make it up. So I think we're going to try that again, right, Hope? Is that?
Yeah, for sure. And,
Okay.
I don't think that the business cards are gone, right? So try to get the contact information that you met, whether it's one of their staff and all of that, just so, again, with the follow-up, exactly who you're going to send the follow-up email and the thank you note as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, I think Manisha has a
Hey, Ari. So a quick question. So of a newbie like me as talking to our representatives, do you have any suggestions when we're talking to them as to, how do we talk to them? Do we come talk to them from the point of, hey, this is some suggestions that is good, or what are the things being done to, help PI?
Yeah, maybe we can kind of provide like a little bit of outline, and I think the afternoon, right? I think the day before, we're going to have another session, maybe with some other folks, talking about the best way to be effective in meetings. But I think that, just think about it as a conversation. So one would be to introduce yourself, make the connection. You're from the district, you live XYZ. What I also like to encourage is for you to look at their website, right? And learn about some background about the member Congress. And they often have a page that says issues, and there'll probably be one on housing, and just kind of see what their interest is in the housing area. So you know a little bit about them. But then also talk about what ARIA is, because people don't, I think they would be helpful for them to know what ARIA is. And then you can talk about, here are some of our priorities, and we would like for you to be supportive of some of these policies. And there's legislation that promote these policies. So you could ask them to support it, to co-sponsor the bill, those kinds of things. But maybe once, I don't know, I'm looking at Jordan right now, maybe we can kind of spell that out a little bit more once we have the 3-point plan laid out. But then that's what they kind of call at the end of the meeting, you'll call it, you have an ask. So that's your ask. Will you support our 3-point plan? Will you support some of these policies? Likely they'll say, oh, I'm going to look back. I'm going to look this over and we'll get back to you. So that's when Hope said, like, make sure you get their emails so you can follow up with them, and just to check to see if they have questions or if they'll be supporting, some of the 3-point plans that you talked about. So it's really just a conversation, and they don't last very long. To imagine, they have so many meetings, and I think that's why if you're meeting with staff, they like to have Zoom calls, because they can meet with a lot of people in one day, as opposed to meeting in person where you have to go get them and bring them into the office, et cetera. So does that help, Manisha?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hey, Manisha, this is Henry from the Boston chapter.
Thank you.
In the previous years, we sometimes adopt people from different chapters to just jump in on, because we kind of roll deep when we go to a policy day. So if you want to just jump in on one of our meetings or something like that, I think you might learn a lot. So just throwing it out there.
Yeah, if that's possible to do, I would love to do that.
Yeah, just reach out to me whenever.
Will do. Thank you.
Ahmed?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of that, Henry, what you said. I would like to attend one of those meetings if possible. So would you please put your information in the chat so I can get in touch with you? Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, the other thing, this is Hope again. The other thing that we're going to be doing is we'll probably do some role playing and subsequent webinar training. So this is not the only one. We plan to do at least 2 more leading up. We'll probably do some role playing. So there's going to be, you know, the staffer and an ARIA member kind of like just, you know, back and forth and all of that stuff, different scenarios. For those who have participated in the past, it'd be great to, you know, just weigh in and give your comment and your tips and all of that stuff. So that's probably going to be the next round of training that we'll have.
Anyone else have any questions or tips they want to add? I guess I'll just say, you know, you have to be a little persistent because you can imagine that staff and schedulers get many, many requests. But that's why we, you know, really pointing out that you're a constituent is important. Oh, one thing I always, I should have mentioned is I believe that the subject line is really important. I think keeping it brief, I would put in, I'll type this in, the meeting request and the dates that you're looking at. Just make it very simple and, you know, and it doesn't get lost. Let's see, for example, I'm gonna put it in here, meeting request for something like this, just very simple on the subject line. I feel like when it's longer, you know, just kind of gets lost, but just make it succinct and to the point. And then, you know, you just be persistent. Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Irene or Jennifer or any of the other members who have done this before? No?
I have a quick question. Yeah. So in this meeting, and granted, this is my first time here, so I'm quite excited. Okay. In your discussions for individuals who've done this many times, has it been where, yes, ARIA is definitely the priority of the discussion, but then it leads into, because obviously they're local to us, you know, my representatives. Does it ever go into the chance where it goes national and then you talk about some of the local issues happening in your own city? Does that ever come up, or do we stay away from that, or?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't make it two organizations, right? Not local, not national. It's one organization. We're lobbying as ARIA.
Okay.
Now, what will happen is that they'll probably ask you, so what have you seen, let's say, in wherever vicinity you're in, right? So
Yeah,
for example, what's happening
exactly.
in San Diego? What's happening with alternative credit in San Diego, or affordable housing in San Diego? And I'll probably say affordable housing in San Diego is probably an oxymoron because there's no such
Okay.
thing as affordable housing right now in San Diego. So it's not two separate entities where
Got
we
it.
are lobbying as one voice.
Got it.
I think they're interested in your, you know, personal experiences. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, they just, you know, want to chat with people that, you know the district. And so if you meet with a member of Congress, you know, that's one thing, but sometimes you might meet with a legislative assistant or staff that doesn't actually, not from the district, may just be getting to know the district. So you may know more about. So often I might ask that question when I meet with staff. It's kind of a icebreaker, you know, like, hey, you know, have you been to are you from the district? Have you been to the district? So it's just a nice kind of icebreaker. Imagine they talk to millions of people. So sometimes it's nice just to start off with an easy question.
A layup. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I put our emails in the chat. So if you have any questions, please let us know. And it sounds like for people, at least on this call, are probably newer to this. So feel free to reach out to us. You know, any questions?
Great. Thanks, Irene. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, you guys.
Watch out for for all of our attendees, watch out for subsequent emails that we're going to be sending, part 2, part 3, part 4, and perhaps part 5 as we get into DC on the 10th, right? The 10th, I think, is when we're planning an in-person kind of like refresher course or refresher training. So again, thanks, Irene. We sure will be in touch with you, and we'll keep you updated on our progress for meetings.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Look forward to seeing all of you in May. So safe travels, and a little cool today, but I'm sure it'll warm up by the time you get here.
Thank you,
All right, sounds good.
everybody,
Thanks,
for being
everyone.
here today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.